NMIT presents Lecture 6 on the topic of photosynthesis. This lecture is part of the plant physiology subject, which is a component of the agricultural and viticultural degree programs offered at NMIT. Please refer to the recommended reading from Tays and Zeiger, Chapter 7 for complementary information. There are 2 lectures on the subject of photosynthesis. This is Lecture 1, where we'll be concentrating on the light reactions. In Lecture 2, we'll be concentrating on the Calvin cycle. My name's Nikki Cooley. The lecture on the light reactions in photosynthesis is separated into 2 parts. I will start by reminding students about the basics of photosynthesis in an overview in Part 1. I'm going to present the reactions that make up photosynthesis and concentrate on the light reaction today. At the end of these lectures, you should have an understanding of the structure and function of the key components of the light reaction, of the chloroplast, and the thylakoid membranes that sit within the chloroplast. I am going to touch on the importance of the conversion of energy in photosynthesis and associated electron chain reactions. Once you have an understanding of photosynthesis, we will end this lecture with a discussion about the relevance of the light reactions in modern agriculture. The word photosynthesis means synthesis using light. But what do we mean by this? It means that light from the sun is captured by the plant, and the energy from this light is then made useful to the plant. The plant's use of energy is to make carbon compounds. The word synthesis is a chemical description of the production of these carbon-based compounds. These compounds are known as carbohydrates or sugars. So let's explore this in a little bit more detail. The plant will absorb water through its leaves, and we covered this process extensively in the previous lecture, Solute Transport in Plants, Lecture 5. Carbon dioxide is absorbed from the atmosphere into the leaves via the stomata. When these 2 compounds are synthesized, the carbohydrate, glucose and oxygen are produced. The formula on the screen describes the chemical reaction for photosynthesis. Once you know that energy cannot be created or destroyed, you realize that it takes energy to create sugar. Plants obtain this energy from the sun. The process of plants obtaining energy from the sun is known as the light requiring action. The formula on the screen gives you information about how many molecules of each component is required to make up one molecule of glucose. The byproduct of this reaction is oxygen. 6 atoms of oxygen are released. This is where humans get their oxygen to breathe. So 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules of water produces 1 molecule of glucose and releases 6 molecules of oxygen into the air. In today's lecture, you will learn about some of the structures which enable photosynthesis to occur. The first structure you should become familiar with is the chloroplast. Here we have an image on the screen of lots of chloroplasts. These green pieces here are lots of chloroplasts in one cell. In plants, photosynthesis is conducted in the eukaryotic cells in the structure called the chloroplast. A plant typically contains many of these structures. There are about 200 chloroplasts in the spinach leaf image. This image is a scanning electron microscopy image of a chloroplast from a young tobacco leaf. So let us break up the chloroplast into some of the interesting components. I'd like you to become familiar today with the thylakoid membranes. They are very important in the light reaction. These are membranes that, when they are stacked, produce grama. The other important component is the stroma. The illustration on your slide is a cartoon type illustration that demonstrates the key components of the chloroplast. Firstly, I'd like you to note that the chloroplast has an outer membrane and an inner membrane. In the inner membrane, sacs fold inwards, and these are called lamellae. The membranes that these lamellae are made of are called the thylakoid membranes, just here and here. When the thylakoid membranes are stacked, they are stacked in a process or an order that's called the granum. Inside the chloroplast is a liquid, and this liquid is called the stroma. And in this liquid is the location of the Calvin cycle, or non-light requiring cycle. But we will cover more about the Calvin cycle in the second lecture. Thylakoid reactions, or the light reactions, occur in the thylakoid membranes. In this process, energy is produced in a chemical form in two molecules called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and NADPH. These compounds are used for the synthesis of sugars in the carbon fixation reactions in the stroma of the chloroplast. ATP is used during the light reaction, whilst NADP is used in the carbon cycle. The reactions with NADP is linked or coupled to the reaction with ATP. This brings us to the end of part 1.